I keep thinking about the way Jay looked at that coffee machine. Not angry, that's the part I can't shake. I've been turning it over for 2 weeks now, and I still don't have the right words for what his face was doing. It wasn't grief exactly, it wasn't shock. It was more like, that moment when you finally get a joke somebody told at your expense a long time ago? When the pieces click and you see the whole thing clearly for the first time, and you realize the clarity itself came a little too late. That's what Jay looked like. And I'm standing there with my coffee cup waiting on the machine, not sure whether to say something. And Jay just looks over at me and goes, "See the announcement?" I had. Everybody had. It went out the night before. Internal email, subject line with 2 names in it. Neither of them was Jay's. And the strange part is, it didn't feel like a mistake. Here's what I want to talk about today, because I've been sitting with this, and I think it matters for more people than just Jay. There's a thing that happens in certain workplaces, and I want to be careful here. I'm not talking about lazy people. I'm not talking about people who coast. I'm talking about a very specific person, the one who teaches everyone, the one who writes everything down, the one who makes sure everything works. You've worked with someone like this, or maybe you are this person. What happens to that person when promotion season comes around? I'm not going to front load the answer. I'm going to tell you what I watched happen to Jay over 18 months at my job and let you decide what to call it. Because the thing that makes this story uncomfortable, the thing that kept me up the night I finally understood it, is that nobody did anything wrong. Jay wasn't cheated, the company wasn't evil, it was just rational. And rational is sometimes the most devastating thing a system can be. So Jay had been at our logistics company about 6 years when I started. He was a coordinator. If you asked anyone back then who was next, it was Jay. He knew every account, every process, which clients would call on Tuesday mornings, which ones only emailed, which vendor relationships were held together with tape and prayer. If the system didn't cover your situation, Jay did. When I was new, he walked me through 3 different onboarding gaps that nobody else had bothered to document, just because. That's who Jay was. At the time, it looked like leadership. Now, I'm not so sure what it was. About a year and a half before the announcement, they brought in 2 new hires. Fresh out of college, didn't know the accounts, didn't know the systems, didn't know the unwritten rules of which vendors to call first and which ones to let go to voicemail. Standard stuff. Every company has that transition period where new people are basically expensive question marks. Jay took them under his wing, not because anyone asked him to, not because it was in his job description, because that's who Jay was. He saw people struggling with process, and he stepped in. He sat with them at his desk and walked them through everything. The accounts, the systems, the workarounds, the shortcuts, the things that weren't in any manual because nobody had ever bothered to write them down. He made documents, actual formatted documents with steps and screenshots. He built a knowledge library on the shared drive that didn't exist before he created it. I used to walk past his desk and see him explaining something, patient as anything, drawing diagrams on a notepad. And I remember thinking, that's a leader. That's somebody who's going to move up because he's already acting like he belongs somewhere higher. Y'all tell me if I'm reading this wrong. Because at the time, every instinct I had said what Jay was doing was exactly right. At the time, I thought Jay was just being a good coworker. Now I think about that word, good. Good for who exactly? The 2 new hires learned fast. Of course they did. They had Jay. Within 6 months, they were handling accounts independently. Within a year, they were the ones other people were going to with questions. They had absorbed everything Jay knew, and they were running with it. And here's the part that's easy to miss in real time. While Jay was teaching outward, training laterally, cross-training downward, distributing everything he knew to everyone around him, nothing was changing for Jay. Same title, same desk, same salary, same seat. He was the sun, everyone was orbiting him. And the sun doesn't go anywhere. I'm not going to pretend I saw it then. I didn't. I walked past his desk and I saw a generous person doing good work. I saw someone being a team player. I saw someone who would obviously get recognized for this, because how could you not recognize it? That's the thing about this particular trap. It doesn't look like a trap from the outside. It looks like exactly what you're supposed to do. The announcement came on a Thursday night. Email goes out, 2 names, senior coordinator roles, effective the following Monday. I read it on my phone in my car, and I sat with it for a minute because something felt off and I couldn't place it right away. Then I placed it. Both names were people Jay had trained, not people who'd been there longer than Jay, not people who came in with more credentials. People who had sat at Jay's desk 18 months ago, not knowing how to read the account dashboard, and Jay had shown them. You still with me? Because this is the part I keep coming back to. I drove the rest of the way home quiet. The next morning is when I saw Jay at the coffee machine. He wasn't falling apart. A different person might have been visibly wrecked, called in sick, been short with people, let you see the hurt. Jay was just still. He poured his coffee and looked at the machine, and when I walked in, he acknowledged me the way he always did. Nod and a half smile. He said, I trained both of them. Not bitter, just factual. Like he was reading a line off a report. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. And Jay looked back at the coffee machine and said something I haven't stopped thinking about since. I taught them everything so I could prove I was ready to move up. Turns out I just proved they didn't need me in the seat anymore. Y'all, I stood there for a second just holding my cup. Cause he wasn't wrong. He had walked into this with completely good intentions and a completely reasonable theory. Teach everything you know, demonstrate leadership capacity, get recognized and rewarded. That's the theory. That's what the culture told him. That's what every leadership article, every mentor conversation, every we need team player speech from every manager he'd ever had told him. The theory was wrong, not because generosity is wrong, because the company wasn't keeping score of what Jay gave. It was keeping score of what Jay was still needed for. And every time Jay taught somebody something, the answer to that question got a little smaller. Now, I already know what some of y'all are thinking right now. You're thinking, this isn't a system, this is just bad luck. Jay didn't interview well, or there were politics, or those two just happened to be better fits. You can't build a whole theory out of one promotion cycle. And look, I hear that. Politics are real. Fit is real. I'm not here to tell you every promotion that goes sideways is a conspiracy. But here's the question I want you to actually sit with. Not whether Jay got unlucky. Whether Jay's own behavior made it easier to pass him over when the time came. Think about what the company knew going into that decision. They knew Jay was reliable. They knew he was knowledgeable. They knew the floor depended on him. And they also knew, because Jay had spent 18 months proving it, that his knowledge could be transferred, that it wasn't locked in his head anymore, that two other people were now running accounts using the exact systems and frameworks Jay had taught them. So when leadership sat down to fill two senior roles, they weren't choosing between Jay and two less capable people. They were choosing between promoting Jay out of a seat he'd made himself essential to, or promoting two people whose growth he had literally funded with his own expertise. Jay made the rational case against himself, not on purpose, not out of carelessness. He made it by being exactly who he was, generous, thorough, and completely focused on proving his readiness by giving away the thing that made him irreplaceable. The company didn't punish Jay for teaching, it just made a rational decision with the inventory Jay had handed them. I went home that night and thought about all of this for a long time. The only time teaching works for you is when you're teaching yourself out of a job you've already outgrown. Teaching in place just means somebody else outgrows it first. That's the reframe. And it sounds simple when I say it out loud, but it took me watching Jay's face at that coffee machine to actually understand what it meant. There's a direction to this thing. If you're actively reaching for something above you, if there's a real path up and you're on it, then handing off your current knowledge to the person below you isn't generosity, it's strategy. You're clearing your current floor so you can move to the next one. Done in that direction, knowledge transfer is a ladder. But if you're teaching in place, handing your knowledge sideways and downward with no movement above you, you're not building a ladder. You're just making yourself easier to pass over because you've already answered the question of what the company needs from you going forward. Jay wasn't stingy with his knowledge. That was never the problem. The problem was the direction. He was teaching outward and downward and staying exactly where he was. And by the time the promotion decision landed, the company had everything Jay knew and two people who could execute it. What exactly were they promoting him to do? 2 weeks after the announcement, Jay put in his notice. He took a role at a competitor, senior title, better pay. And here's the part I keep thinking about. They hired him specifically because of what he knew about our systems and our clients. The same knowledge that couldn't get him promoted here just got him hired somewhere else. He walked out of that building carrying everything in his head, and a competitor paid him a title and a salary to bring it all over. I was at my desk the afternoon he said his goodbyes. We shook hands and I watched him walk toward the elevator, and I thought about something my grandfather used to say. He'd say, "Son, what you know is only worth something if you know where to take it." I don't think Jay understood that going in. I don't think most of us do. We think teaching is currency, that the more we give, the more we earn. And sometimes that's true, but it depends entirely on where you're standing when you give it and whether the floor beneath you is moving. Jay's floor wasn't moving, so everything he gave just made the floor stronger for everyone else. I've been back to that break room a lot since Jay left. Coffee machine's the same. The shared drive still has his documents on it. All those step-by-step guides, all those screenshots, all that careful patient work. His name is still on the files. The 2 people he trained are senior coordinators now. The floor runs fine. And I keep standing there in the early morning quiet thinking about what Jay said at that machine. I taught them everything so I could prove I was ready to move up. Turns out I just proved they didn't need me in the seat anymore. Knowledge isn't worth what you know. It's worth where you take it. I didn't figure that out until I watched Jay figure it out the hard way. And I think about how many people are sitting at their desks right now doing exactly what Jay did. Teaching everything, documenting everything, cross-training everyone, believing the same thing Jay believed. That generosity gets recognized, that the most knowledgeable person in the room becomes the most valuable. Sometimes they're right, and sometimes they're Jay. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever been the person who trained everyone and watched someone else get the promotion? Or are you in it right now and you're just now seeing it for what it is? I read every single one, and I promise you, half of y'all are going to recognize each other's stories in the comments. And if you've got a Jay at your job, somebody giving everything away without getting anything back, send this to them today. Because nobody's going to explain this in a performance review. I'm Reggie. Y'all stay sharp out there.